The SawZall, also known reciprocating saw. And to help me explain this, we have a special guest host, Mrs. Nelson. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the SawZall. The SawZall is also known as the reciprocating saw. Milwaukee was the first one to ever make one, and they called it the SawZall, and so in people's heads, usually that's what they call it. But if you hear someone say a reciprocating saw, it's the same thing. And so it's a very simple tool, very few bells and whistles. We'll start with the big one first. So basically there is, on battery tools, there's always a safety. So there's an unlock button here or a lock. You put it in lock mode, just activates the trigger. Unlock, ready to go. As a speed adjustment, for the most part, we always just leave it full speed because the trigger itself, how hard you squeeze the trigger, adjust the speed. So you don't really need to touch that. This one, it changes the blade from a perfect straight back and forth to orbital motion. If you change this dial again, you don't really have to mess with it. They're basically the same thing. I don't really know why. And then lastly, the blade itself, how you change it, is you twist this little thing. I'm going to put a battery in so I can pop it out a little bit. So you can get to it. So all you have to do is twist this little dial. Before you do change the blade, you pop out the battery, so don't cut your fingers. You just twist this, the blade pops out, just like that. You put it back in, you know it's locked in, but it doesn't fall out. Ms. Nelson is now going to show us how to change the blade. And if you see, sometimes the bit is harder to get to. And so in this case, all you have to do is squeeze the trigger a little bit until, there you go, until you get a position where it's easy to grab, and now you're good to go. Go ahead and change the blade. So all you have to do is twist that, and then pull the blade at the same time. There you go, just like that. So that's how you're going to change the blade. Same way when you go to put it back in, you're going to twist that and slide it right back in. Go ahead and show us that. All right, just like that. The blade is back in. Something to be mindful of, if you're using the saw to cut a lot, the blade is going to be hot. So make sure you let the blade cool down before you go ahead and grab it and try to change the blade out. When you use a SawZall, what you want to think of is you want to cut the least amount of material as possible. And so if you're cutting on this whole board flat ways, that's 3.5 inches of material you want to cut. And that's a lot of work for the blade. But think what happens when you move it onto an angle like this? How much wood are you cutting?
A little bit at a time.
Right, just this corner. And then if you rock it back this direction, what's going to happen?
You're going to slowly cut through it.
Right, slowly this corner. Right, so then if you take your two corners, what have you got created?
Like a triangle.
Another peak, which is just a little bit. And so as you cut through heavy material, you don't want it to stay flat. You want to constantly, slowly be moving it back and forth, rocking it, so you're creating those little angles. It'll cut through, it just is harder work on the blade. And so you want to do it slowly back and forth, and just like that. And so I'll demonstrate one cut, and then I'll let you go for it.
All right. Super simple.
So when you're cutting your material, it's important, again, you want to be cutting the least amount of wood as possible. If you try to take the blade, can you just rest it here? Across the top? You're cutting through 3.5 inches of material, and that's a lot. The blade can do it, it's just gonna take you longer. So to be more efficient, you wanna rock the blade at an angle, so go ahead and match that angle. And so look how much little wood you're cutting through. And so you're gonna cut back to the middle. And if you rock it to the other side, go ahead and lean it the other way. Again, you're cutting through maybe 1/4 inch up to 1.5 inches, which is half the distance. And then if you cut that, look what you create in the middle. You're gonna create another fine point. So again, you can do little tiny lines. And so if you continue that process all the way down, it's gonna be more efficient cut. So go ahead and show us how you do that. So now you've had a chance to use a SawZall, what kind of things do you think you'd be cutting with this? You think you're gonna be cutting your trim work or your furniture in your house?
Not quite.
So what do you think it's used for?
Well, I think it could be used to cut a couple different things. You could use it to cut wood, you could use it to cut plumbing pipe, even metal in some cases.
You're exactly right. So this is, for the most part, you're using this to take something apart. This isn't to build new things. For the most part, you're carrying apart a mistake or old construction. You're gonna use it for demolition. And so why it's so popular for that is these blades aren't that expensive and they can cut through anything. This blade's designed to cut through wood and nails. And if you see this board, it's full of screws and nails from other demonstrations, right? And so this blade can cut right through it with ease. And so this one, Milwaukee calls it the hacksaw. All it is a smaller version of this. And so what makes this one cool is you can use it with one hand. And so this is useful for those situations where you have to reach, maybe cut a pipe that's up high or a board you can't quite get to. It's just nice because you only have to use one hand, or even if you have to hold the other board, you're able to cut it with just one hand. And so this is just a smaller version. When using SawZalls, you can see there's a bunch of different sizes of blades, different styles. And so how you know what it's used for is basically you look at the size of the teeth. If you look at these ones, the teeth are larger in comparison to this one. So if you look at the difference between these two, you can see the top one that says metal on it is made to cut metal because you see those little tiny teeth, see how fine they are? And because if you're thinking metal is a hard surface, you're just taking little scratches out at a time, whereas the blade on the bottom has bigger teeth, and that one's designed to cut through wood because it's a softer material and you're removing whole chunks of wood, not just little tiny scraps. And so the blades come in all different sizes and lengths for different jobs. The long, narrower ones are made so you can flex them, and then you can make a flush cut. So you're trying to hold something flat, you can do it that way. And bigger ones are just to cut through thicker material. So again, with the blade, make sure you get the right one for the right job. So a common thing you might use with a SawZall is to cut out a bottom plate on one of your walls. Now the problem is if you lead your blade in this way, look what's gonna happen. Because how the handle is made, you're never gonna be able to cut this edge and it's gonna be hard. But a cool thing you can do is you can actually flip the blade upside down. So show us what happens when you do that.
All right, so you're gonna take it out just like you put it in, flip the blade around, let it go.
And now look, now you can get all the way flat. If this board wasn't here, now you can get all the way flat to your surface so you're able to make that clean cut. And so sometimes you have to, it makes it easier. Some people I know always keep it reversed. Depends on your job, but you can always reverse your blade on a SawZall. All right, now to use the SawZall, you see it's not that hard to use. It's a very effective tool. It can do all kinds of things. You're going to be using it for demo work, and it can cut through anything. You have the right blade for the job. You can cut through wood with metal in it with all these nails, or maybe you want to go trim the trees at your house. There's a special blade just for that. And so get the right blade for the job, and this thing will get the job done. So what do you think of any safety issues might come up when using this saw?
Well, first and foremost, you don't want to cut your fingers off, so make sure that you always have that safety on when you are not using it. I would also say make sure that you have some eye gear to protect your eyes, because you don't want to lose those either.
Yeah. So this one, relatively, of all the saws, this one's pretty safe because it won't instantly cut off your finger like some of the other ones will. It'll give you a nasty cut, but hopefully your finger will still stay intact. So stay away from the business end of the blade, and you're good to go. And like you said, when you're walking around, keep that safety on, and don't be messing with the trigger as you walk, because that's just dangerous. And always make sure you wear your safety glasses. And if you do all those things, you should be safe and be able to get the job done. So thank you for tuning into this episode, and join us next time for Tool Time!